And welcome back. Apparently, you've all been very, very bad because it's time for another BattleTech Flashpoint playthrough. A bit of a gap in these while I was working on a few other things, none of which has been released yet. Sorry about that, but here we go. We're on to the next one. We are at Pilpala in the Free Worlds League, taking on a contract to work against House Steiner, which this is another one where why are they here, but whatever. It's not as far fetched or idiotic as so many of the other ones are, so I won't say too much about that. Uh, Other than why would the Lyran Commonwealth have a reinforced fortified base on a planet on, again, the opposite end of this realm from where their border is? But whatever. Would make just as much, well, more sense and not be as confusing if it were the Capellan Confederation, which is just across the border. But whatever. Whatever. This one is pretty short, sweet, and straightforward, so. Also, I don't run into the problem I have in several others. I've recorded or I should say, edited the next two or three of these videos for the talk to go over it, and I think all three, if not two out of the three, have no audio because for some reason it didn't record any audio. So it's going to be relatively simple and straightforward because I'm not going to have to adjust audio levels to try and keep the vocal audible above all the battle sounds. So there's that. But for some reason, when I was doing this one, my computer was being very slow. And I had nothing running in the background, but I've been having some issues with my computer recently, so nothing catastrophic, just annoying. This is another one of those where, as I was editing it, I didn't realize how long some of these title screens I left up for. I've been trying to leave them up long enough for people to be able to read them if they want to, but then when I'm done editing and actually watch the video, I'm like, I left that up longer than I needed to, but whatever. So this just being a standard mission with no weight limits, taking the standard Command Lance, Marauder, Warhammer Archer, and Thunderbolt with my usual four pilots. I have been running side missions right and left trying to train up my B team to be able to have a backup lance if any of these go down. In almost every mission I run, no matter what I do, I have a pilot get killed. I have been through so many nobody pilots that I get them about half trained up, and bam, they get a random headshot or ammo explosion or something, and they're gone. It's so annoying, but I also have, as you will see in one of the ones I have coming up, which I think will be probably two or three after this one, because I've run several of these to get the film stocks built up to be able to do them. Um, some of these flashpoints also make you take preset mechs with warriors that are not from your roster. They're from either from a supporting unit or a house military or something. Kind of like that Hatchet Man one, where the Hatchet Man pilot was a Steiner test pilot. Uh, there is one coming up that I'm going to do simply because it gives me a lot to talk about. It is something with in-universe stuff to go with it, so it's worth doing and talking about and recording. But the final mission of that flashpoint, you get given four mechs that are not yours. You're only allowed to choose one pilot. You have two or three others that are not yours that are from another unit. And the one you will see when I get to it is the fourth time I ran that mission because they kept getting annihilated. I'll get into all the different things I tried when I do that one, but some of these flashpoints, they seem bound and determined to make them not even like fun and challenging, but monotonously stupid and impossible to beat in any sensible way. Thankfully, however, this is not one of them. As you see, we have the three target points. Basically, what we're doing is, if you are familiar with modern stuff, basically think of yourself as a forward artillery spotter, and you are going to these three positions. Basically, they appear on your HUD for you to go to as set up by your mission planning and all that, but they are not known points to who you're working for House Marik here. You go to these points and then transmit, they lock your location. You're basically trying to get three roughly equidistant points from this center target so that they can triangulate from those three, figure the center, and aim at that and take out this target. Because as it says in the mission briefing, there are actually a sizable population of people who live in this jungle and they're trying to keep collateral damage to a minimum. Which, this being the era when, long after the successor states were glassing planets just because somebody on them looked at them sideways, kudos for that. But it does also sometimes in these missions make things more difficult than it needs to be. This one, however, isn't that bad. There are some worse ones. This one actually goes pretty well. There are some of these where, like every one of these points, it spawns in a new uh, lance of max, and the lances are always right in between you and where you need to get to with a time limit. So it's either run through them and get blasted trying to get to the target point, or take the time to take out the enemy and run out of time and not be able to do it. So, yeah, but this one is not like that, thankfully. This one's much better set up. It's still challenging. It's not like it's set up easy. But this is one where if you take assault mechs and try to blast your way through with firepower, they can't really move fast enough to get to where you need to be. And if you take mediums going for speed, you can make yourself very, very vulnerable to being taken out by enemy fire. So I find a lance of heavy mechs with the best firepower I can put on them is the best balance, a way to get through these types of missions. So one of the positions has already been spotted and registered. Now we got to get to the other two. This is also a mission where you very much benefit from splitting up your forces, as you'll see here I do. I send one fast mover toward one point, one toward another point, use the other two to basically give them both supporting fire and keep the enemy off them. It's about the best way to get through these types of missions. I can't remember if this one is one that has a couple awkward pauses in it. I filmed these when my son was visiting, and he was very entertained doing things on his own. But a couple of times he called out and needed my attention, me to pay attention to something he was doing. So there might be a couple awkward pauses in here. That's all it is a 5-year-old demanding attention. Because I figured, oh, he's occupied. He's playing a game on his Nintendo, and he's watching cartoons and stuff. He's not going to need me. He hasn't bothered me for like an hour while I've been writing, so let me get some recording done. And as soon as I started the game, he decided he needed Dad's attention, which is fine. I'm not complaining, but just a heads up. Some of the pauses in this one and a couple of subsequent ones might be from that. Next weekend, I'm going to have just my daughter for the weekend, and she wants to go to the local game store and play BattleTech with people. That's my girl. I had them both, taught them both how to play the Alpha Strike Rules version of BattleTech a couple of weeks ago, and they very much enjoyed it. So I'm very happy I have something I enjoy that my kids are also getting into. My daughter even picked out a miniature out of the ones I had that wasn't using to paint up for herself, so she definitely seems to be enjoying it. Now, if I can just get her to start reading some of the fiction and getting into the universe, but one step at a time. My son likes watching me play this. He might have even been sitting in the room with me for some of these. I can't remember what battles I was doing when he was sitting in here with me. When he realized this is what I was playing, he came in and sat on my bed and was watching me. Playing his Nintendo and giving me a blow-by-blow of his, I think it was 5 different times fighting the boss in this Kirby game he was playing. He doesn't want to get dead, Medusa. He wants to be unalived. There's a difference. I've also been picking up and editing, or painting and adding to my collection of minis over the last few weeks too. In addition to having the HBS models of these, my Command Lance mechs, I've been picking them up, the CGL, the Catalyst Game Labs, the official versions of the same mechs, because some of them I think the designs for the tabletop game are just much better than the computer game versions of them. I've also got 3 out of 4 of my medium lance that I started out with. I still have to get the Wolverine, but I've got the Griffin, the Hunchback, and I decided when I wasn't recording I liked more a blackjack than a trebuchet, so I replaced that. I've got a good blackjack. And I've also got a couple of Op 4 mechs. I've got a Mad Cat that I'm in the process of painting up as a Goliath Scorpion Seeker. I've got an Atlas that I painted up as a Lyran Guard. So I've been busy. I've also been doing a lot of writing, trying to get stuff out of my head and get it down. Probably will never see the light of day or be used for anything, but it gets it out of my skull and makes room for other things. I need to get back to doing my podcasts. I haven't done one of those in almost 2 months now. I've been just focusing on doing too much other stuff. I've gotten several of them that I've written and recorded, and then after I'm done recording them and listen to them before publishing them, they're just not that interesting. Like, I don't think anybody but me would ever want to listen to them, so I don't even bother publishing them. I just delete them. What's the point of putting stuff out there if nobody's going to want to listen to it? Hey, just like with these videos. But it gives me something to do. Plus these, at least I'm getting to play a game and then just talk about it. I'm not having to research and write a script for something that nobody will ever bother to listen to. Big difference. Thankfully, you have a lance in support of you in this mission, but they're not typical AI. They're not especially helpful, but at least in this case, they're not a hindrance either. Being able to take a second lance of your own max would be a lot more useful, but could be worse. I'm also happy because a couple of the missions I have coming up that I do, I get to royally screw over the Capellans, which is always a fun thing to do. So, to paraphrase the line from the Austin Powers movies with his dad, there are only 2 types of people in this world I can't stand: those who are intolerant of other people's cultures, and the Capellans. Being somebody who normally plays as either House Marik or the Federated Commonwealth, it's just natural. The Capellans are always the opposition, and just in the lore, like I don't like the Draconis Combine, but I don't hate them either. They're interesting. They do have some really interesting plot lines and storylines in the novels. The Capellans are always just Saturday morning cartoon bad guys. Like they might as well be run by Cobra Commander. They're awful. Like the Capellan Confederation, they weren't intended to be that way. You can tell by how they were originally written. They were supposed to be like Machiavellian North Korea communist China kind of thing. And they just turned into a meme over time. Like, they've gotten better. Some different writers that have handled them have taken them in new directions. And some of the leaders and characters of the faction over time have not been that bad. Like Sun Tzu Liao, the one that was the last First Lord of the renewed Star League and all that in the later storyline FedCom Civil War era. But on the whole, they're just, I hate to say it, and if this applies to you, I apologize for insulting you by proxy, but everybody I know that is pro Capellan because they like being a goofy bad guy. Like, they're the same guys who deliberately played as Cobra and G.I. Joe as kids, or, you know, they're the guys that like Starscream from Transformers. I'm sorry to say. They're just, ugh. How goofy and incompetent can we make our bad guys? Now give them an arm holding a sword as their logo, and we'll call it the Capellan Confederation. It's, ugh. I mean, to flip that on its head, the Federated Sons are usually like over the top noble good guys in this, except from everybody else's perspective. So, it goes both ways. I find the Fed Sons to be just as annoying overall sometimes, but at least they have better written and more compelling characters for the most part. Even if I do cringe every time I read the Warrior trilogy and a 40-something-year-old Hans Davion marrying a girl who just turned 18 to get his hands on her realm, but whatever. They managed to pump out like 6 kids. Good for him. I don't care what kind of plot dressing and dialogue and character development they put on it to say that they really loved each other and it was a great match. He's 40 something and she had just turned 18. I am 42. If I was to go out and marry a girl who just turned 18, I would be put on a watch list. But then I'm not leading an interstellar empire, so who cares? Not only that, I couldn't stand 18-year-old girls when I was 18. If I had to put up with one, oh God, if I had to put up with one now, ugh. Thankfully, the second part of this mission takes far less time than the first part does. This is very straightforward. That's why I haven't really been talking about much what's going on the screen here, because it's very straightforward and self-explanatory, but I still didn't want to skip over it, so. Yes, all glory to the purple parakeet. How dare Space Imperial Germany set up a base in Space Austria-Hungary's territory? Although the Free Worlds League is far more the Austro-Hungarians than how Steiner is the Imperial Germans. Like, they're definitely not Nazi era Germany. They're not really like federal modern era Germany. They're something. They're like a mishmash of various things of like German and British and Western European history. Whereas the Free Worlds League is very South European, Balkan. I mean, for God's sake, if I remember right, Czech and Romanian are two of the official languages of the Free Worlds League. That should tell you a lot of what you need to know about where their influences came from. How Steiner is German, or I should say the Lyran Commonwealth is German, Scots Gaelic, English, and Italian as their official languages. Capellan Confederation is generally, if I remember right, Mandarin Chinese, Russian, English, and there's one more, but I'm drawing a blank. Fed Sons is mostly English and French. Japanese is, or the, I'm sorry, House Kurita and the Draconis Combine is Japanese and English. All of them have English because English was the standard language of the Star League. So, because the Star League was basically headed by an extension of the Terran hegemony, which grew out of NATO, which was headed by the United States and UK. So the main language of everything in the Terran hegemony in Star League was English. I'm still working on a podcast about what led to that era, but I've had so much other stuff I'm working on, I just haven't had the urge to finish it, basically. I'll sit down for a day and write a section of it and then not get back to it for weeks just because I just don't feel like doing it. But I'm basically doing one that starts off where the timeline branches off into an alternate history from where we are to show how BattleTech and the interstellar states and everything got to where they are uh, up to the start of the Star League. Basically, not to really get too much into it, but just to give a quick overview, the timeline branches off in about 1988, 1989 in the timeline of BattleTech. Uh, the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact did not collapse in 1989 as they do in ours. The Soviet Union and the Cold War, by extension, continued well into the 21st century until after a bunch of weird things happened. There was the Second Russian Civil War, which very, very nearly turned into another world war and was about 10 years long, if I remember right. But from that, what had been NATO was now basically the only superpower, more or less, on Earth, and expanded to start including Russia and former parts of the Warsaw Pact and things in Asia, and became, instead of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, the Terran Alliance. And then later on, long after spreading out into space, morphed into the Terran hegemony, which then was the one that talked everybody, all of the other subsequent states that started out in space, into joining up into the Star League, with a whole lot of drama and fighting in between. But that's where things differ, is from the late 1980s on. It's a very different timeline from ours. That's why some aspects of it can seem familiar. There's things in the novels and in the source books that will refer to things from our history up until a certain point, and then things start to get unfamiliar. Is basically toward the end of the Cold War in our timeline is when this timeline goes off in its own direction. Which I think is very interesting. I think it's an interesting take on what would have happened had the Cold War continued, because it's part of the reason the technology in this, when you look into that period, is so different from ours, and the state of the world is so different, is if there had been basically another half century of the Cold War and of the U.S. and the Soviet Union, and then by extension NATO and the Warsaw Pact, just pumping so much money and resources into military technology development. I mean, you have armed space stations and everything else in the 2020s of this particular timeline, because the Cold War had been going on, and just basically all of the money was being thrown at military and technology development. So that's why in this timeline, by the end of the 21st century, going into the 22nd century, we're already like getting into experimenting with faster than light travel, because it's jumping off from a more advanced technology base, because there was impetus to put more money and research time and funds and everything into advancing all this technology that was required for that. Which sounds kind of dumb and confusing, but as I lay it out and explain it and get into it in the podcast that I'm writing, or maybe it'll be a video, I'm not sure. But either way, the script I'm writing, I go chronologically and explain how things are happening, so it makes more sense. Everything is in context as it develops. So I try not to get into the itty bitty little minutia of everything, but I do try to explain the how and why of how it got to where it's at. So as you see, I selected the money on this one. go on, take the money and run. So I get a Warhammer out of it and a piece of a Zeus, but that's about it for salvage. Usually on these, I take the money over the salvage because, as you see, I've been running up a lot of repair bills. So try to try to make the money where I can. Trying to get another crew trained up is killing me financially, having to keep hiring new people because they die on me. And here we're being told that those folks that just helped us out, that Lance, is being targeted by a Steiner kill team for taking part in that. And they're asking us for help at the same time that the Lyrans are offering us a contract on the other side of the planet to keep us busy. And me being me, I have no reason to suck up to House Steiner, and those guys helped us out in the last one, so I'm going to return the favor. You don't really get anything out of it. I kind of do this. I'm hoping at some point, if they ever add more flashpoints and more content, something from this will become plot important. Either like maybe one of them will become hireable in a store or something, or you know those guys will come in to rescue you during another mission because you helped them when you didn't get anything out of it or something. I'm hoping. And as I say, I've got no reason to help House Steiner. I really, like, they pay well, but I have no alliance with them or anything. So, yeah, I'd rather help out warriors that helped me than take a contract and stay on the good side of a house that is nowhere near us and has no business being here. I'm much more likely to run into these House Marik mech warriors than I am to, go to war with the Lyran Commonwealth. So. This part of it is simple and straightforward. You just have a Steiner kill team, a heavy slash assault lance, if I remember right, that is trying to take out these Marik mech warriors that you have to eliminate and keep them alive. If I remember right, there might be a backup lance that comes in with them, but I'm not positive. I might be thinking of a different mission. But this is basically just a straight up fight. Kill them before they kill you to keep your, at least for the moment, allies safe. To keep them away from them. Oh, look, another Hatchet Man. At least being House Steiner, it makes sense. Yeah, you see how glitchy the graphics are on this, and it keeps dropping down to basically a slideshow. This is what I was talking about, my computer giving me trouble. I don't know why it was doing this or what was causing it, but it did it on. It's been doing it on and off for probably 4 or 5 days now. I don't know if I picked up a virus somewhere or there's something running in the background that I can't find to turn off that's taking um, taking up memory or what's going on here. So Hatchet Man and Orion. What else have we got? Right, there's at least one assault mech in there. Also, after one of these flashpoints, I go in and tweak my loadouts on a couple of my mechs. I put the PPCs back on my Warhammer and change the loadout on the Archer to be more in line with a later variant of it. I give it two LRM-15s and two large lasers so that when it runs out of ammunition, at least it has some punch. Because I do start running into a few missions where, believe it or not, that Archer runs out of ammunition. I had one where there were so many targets. I had the Archer with a catapult in support, and they both ran out of ammunition. That was when I decided, okay, time to tweak the firepower on these guys a little bit. So we got two Orions, a Hatchet Man, and is that a Banshee over on the side there? why this mission is so much louder than the other one was. I didn't bother putting on my headphones today because I'm sitting quite far away from my computer. I didn't feel like constantly having the cord pulling at me, so I didn't bother with them. I guess I'll have to on the next one. Although I think that's one of the ones that has no sound, so it really won't make any difference. And the volume keeps going up and down, too. That was a lot quieter than the previous audio had been, and now it's come back up again. Yeah. I don't know if it's something with my recording software or what's going on, but it's been very weird with the audio recently. Although I'm kind of hoping having this noise in the background and having something for the microphone to pick up will cut down on that squealing in moments of quiet from me. It's also one reason I've been talking more, is I'm trying to cut down on that annoying electronic background noise that these always seem to have that comes up when I'm not talking. Yeah, you got his arm. That's not too bad. Yeah, it is a Banshee. Okay. If I piloted a Banshee, I'd have that thing covered in loudspeakers and have it just randomly start screeching to go with the name. Ah, 'tis the Banshee! Just have a loop of Mariah Carey hitting high notes. Ah, make it stop! Kill me, I don't care, just make it stop! Like, you can't tell me House Steiner, Lyran Commonwealth, especially like the Lyran Guards or the Royal Guards, you cannot tell me their dropships do not sweep in over the battlefield before hot dropping mechs, blasting Ride of the Valkyries like it's frickin' Apocalypse Now. You cannot tell me they don't do that. That is psychological warfare at its finest. Ride of the Valkyries blasting dun da 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 as drop pods with us atlases are being kicked out of a frickin' drop ship. A line of leopards coming in like a line of Hueys, all full of medium and heavy mechs. Fortunate Son intensifies. Now that would be the Davions. I could totally see House Davion and the Federated Sons, their dropships having a switch where they turn on Fortunate Son as they're flying into battle. I could totally see that. I mean, it's not as bad as the Capellans or the Curetans would have, like, a door gunner on their dropships. You know, some guy with a mini gun in the vacuum of space in a frickin' astronaut suit. I could totally see that, too. For great honor and glory. For the glory of the Chancellor, as you're dying to the vacuum of space with a gun. Like, if you want a really good idea of how messed up warfare and the politics in the Inner Sphere are, there is a post that's been going around for years called "If World War One was a bar fight," that explains World War One if it had just been a bar brawl. Just change the names of the states in that and some of it around to be the various states and houses and even mercenary units and later clans of the Inner Sphere. That is how messed up the Inner Sphere is. It is basically the political state leading into World War One. Like, all it takes is one person to get pissed at somebody else, and boom, you've got another succession war going. Or, you know, in the case of the Fourth Succession War, Hans Davion to decide, what do you give the teenager who has everything? I know, I'll give her the Capellan Confederation. And I'm not exaggerating. At the wedding speech, when she gives him a regiment of mechs to be raised and staffed in perpetuity, which I believe becomes the first Fed Sons Regimental Combat Team, he responds by saying, "And my dear, I give you the Capellan Confederation. as the Fourth Succession War had jumped off the day before, and both House Steiner and House Davion had declared war and invaded the Capellan Confederation, the Free Worlds League, and the Draconis Combine simultaneously to take over the Capellan Confederation and keep their two allies busy. Yeah. You think Game of Thrones is bad? Yeah. I, I, I killed a king at a wedding. I killed a king and his army at a wedding. I destroyed an entire state at a wedding. Fuck you. Eh, yeah. BattleTech is Game of Thrones before there was Game of Thrones, just with giant stompy robots and spaceships. Yay, we're done. Damn right you owe me one. There we go. That's the end of this. What did I get out of it? Part of an Atlas 2 and a decent ballistic computer. Other than that, not really much that's useful. But there you go. That was that one. After I get this one uploaded, I'll get started on the next. So have a good one. Glory to the Purple Parakeet. Death to House Steiner. All of that. And